Hey, road trippers, welcome to another episode of Road Tripping. Look, it's summertime, it's time for the family trips, time for trips with all the friends. Have you been stalling on booking a trip like I have? Well, the nerds at NerdWallet are here to help you. Take the first step towards making your dream a reality. NerdWallet's team of nerds research hundreds of the top credit cards, mortgages, and so much more so you can easily compare and find what's right for you. Maybe you're looking for some quality in-person fun with your friends or watching your favorite team live and in person. NerdWallet can help you compare and find the right travel credit cards with a sign-up bonus to use on flights to the game. Ready to compare your way there? Take the first step by discovering the smartest credit cards, mortgages, and more today at nerdwallet.com in MLS 1617539. When I say resentment, it's not like people did, like they're the two most likable superstars.
I mean, did you see the parade for Klay?
Right?
Did you see the amount of fumbles? The hat running over the lady, dropping the ring.
Yeah, that's
amazing. Welcome to this edition of Road Trippin with RJ and Channing, or lack thereof this week with Channing. I'm your host, ALLIE CLIFTON. Rich, it's just you and I today. Having said that, I do find it kind of odd. Every once in a while we have to give our guy a hard time that you guys are both in the same city, kind of for the same reason. You actually are probably doing more because you're everything but lazy. Way more. We'll get into that. We'll get into that conversation later. But you're in the same city for the same reason. It is Kevin Love's wedding this weekend, and yet Channing can't do the podcast with us.
Well, and it is Kevin Love's wedding, right? And it's the draft. So I am.
But Channing's not doing anything for the draft.
I know, but it's our guy. That's why we love him. He actually texted me. I haven't had a chance to respond back to him. He texted me. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He goes, "What are you doing today, fucktard?" And I was like, "Bro, I'm doing a lot of things. I'm like, I'm doing our podcast. Then I got to go to work for a few hours. But yeah, maybe at like 8, I'm cleared before the draft, which is a good news. But that's it. So I'm just working, and then I'm gonna go meet up with those idiots.
Oh my God, that's going to be so much fun. Are you guys excited? Are you excited? Is Kevin excited?
Yeah, I am excited. Me and Channing are emceeing that wedding. So all the road tripping people, they understand what that's about to be. So so that's going to be fun.
So Kate approved of that? Okay.
It was actually Kate's idea because I think somebody might have asked him like, "Hey, do you guys have somebody that you might want to MC a wedding?" And I will give a little credit to our guy Geeter. I actually reached out to him as like, "Hey, now anybody that doesn't know this, Chris McGee Geeter, he works for Spectrum, has been on this podcast many times. He is the master MCer of any event. He is next level, best I've ever seen, and I've seen some Hall of Famers. So I even reached out to him for a little input."
Can you give us a little bit of his advice? Because I've been to a wedding actually that he officiated. Is that the proper term?
He officiates weddings, and then he does like a little intro for the bride and groom and all of the groomsmen. We have a small wedding party, so it's a little bit different, but Geeter does hours of research, like almost researching a game. He'll go down in people's Instagrams, he'll find out about their grandmother, their ex-boyfriend, all the jokes that he can do, just so that Geeter only wants to be the third most important person at the wedding behind the two people who are getting married, but he wants to steal the show. That's the type of effort he puts in. I'm not going to go that far, but yeah, it'll be a good time.
How many drinks will you have consumed by the time you grab that mic? Are you a liquid courage guy?
No. Like, I do not need liquid. I do not need liquid for courage. But I will say this: when I do have liquid, it's an issue. No, you know what? We got to check. We have some meetings because we're a part of the wedding like thing, and so we have some meetings. So I'm gonna see how much we have. And it's kind of split duties between Channing and I. So that means that just like this, I'm gonna do like 90% of the work. I'm just kidding, Channing. I'm just kidding. I'm just going to give him shit because he's not here. I love our guy. He's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Bro, I'm working." What are you
doing? The podcast, actually. That's what we're doing. All right.
Yeah.
So let's get into the finals are over. Easy transition.
Yeah, finals are over.
But before we do, I guess we should congrats and shout out to Kate and Kevin. That's awesome. Congrats to them on
shout out to our people,
their marriage and their love. So the finals are over. Finally, have you been able to take a breath yet?
No, I have not. I have not been able to take a breath because we go finals, then we go draft, then we go free agency, then we go summer. After summer league is when, for us in the media, we get to kind of take a little bit of a break. So that's the part that becomes a little bit more beneficial for us in that space. So I was home for 3.5 days. You and I did some yoga together. We were chilling. Everybody was kicking it, and then it was back on a plane. My plane got diverted from New York to land in Chicago for a few hours, so I got here at about 1 a.m. And because I'm an idiot, my assistant Naila, I went to the Jane Hotel, and I was like, "Hey, they don't have a reservation." After being delayed 4 hours and getting, she's like, "Richard, it's at the James." I'm like, "James, Jane, what's the difference?" Right? I was like, "I don't know how this hotel identifies."
Okay, having said that, congrats to the Warriors. I will say the other day, again, people know this, I work on the Laker Network, and we showed some highlights of the parade. I think there was a couple different angles. Obviously, the LeBron and the Draymond questions, him walking around with a bottle of Lobos, it was an easy segue. And then he got comments or questions, if you will, from the media about comparing who is tougher to go up against, the Boston Celtics or LeBron James. And respectfully, I don't know if you heard the soundbite from Draymond. He said
I heard it.
Yes, okay, there you go. So we talked about that. We also talked about, obviously, Michael Thompson is our color analyst on the radio side for the Lakers, and Klay. So we showed some different kind of clips, and it took the Lakers back into, obviously, the mini championships and parades that they have got to endure. But some fans were like, "Why are you showing the Warrior parade highlights on the Laker Network?" And I don't think they were as happy. However,
no, they don't play. Like this was a Lakers fan's nightmare. And as much as they hate the Golden State Warriors, there will never be a team that they hate more than the Boston Celtics. They would rather have the Warriors win 10 in a row than have the Celtics win one. That's how much they hate them.
Yeah,
that's how much they hate the Celtics.
But it kind of takes us into the point of how great the Warriors have been. And you talked about it the entire finals run, especially. Their fourth title in 8 years. They're being immediately compared to some of the best dynasties in NBA history. Let's start there. And then I know you have some thoughts about things that came out of this championship as well.
Look, they are a dynasty. Like, it's hard when you're living in it to like acknowledge it. Like, Jordan and them won 6 championships in 8 years. Jordan took 2 years off, where the Warriors won 4 championships in 8 years and had had 3, I would say 2.5 seasons where everyone was injured, right? Because 2 seasons Klay missed, and then they got both him and KD got hurt during their finals run. So, this could have easily been 2 more championships. This, Jordan respectfully took time off because, of all of the stuff that was going on in his life. Respect that. The Warriors were like forced. Kevin Durant left, and you could see that if Klay was 100% healthy, if all the different things that would happen, they would still be able to. They might have won another championship. In my opinion, in this 2-year window that Klay was hurt with an Achilles and an ACL, if he would have been healthy, but. No, they are a dynasty, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. I still think that there's nothing like your first championship, and I think their first one in 2015. I think that gives them the confidence. I know ALLIE was there; she's starting to smirk about that. But I think this one is their most important. This is the one that solidifies them that they won it without the KD. They won it being banged up. They would never face elimination. Draymond said it early. He's like, we were never beat when we were fully healthy. I'm like, Draymond, that's not 100% true. We talked about that. But no, this one is special, man. And I am glad that we can sit back here now and we don't have to have any more Steph Curry legacy talks. We don't have to have any more of that. Not saying that his legacy is complete, but there's nothing left for him to accomplish other than to add to it. That's it. That's all he's doing is going to add to it. He's checked every box. He's done everything that he needs to, and salute to him. He is one of the best superstars and one of the best people that I've ever been around, especially given all the things that's been in his plate.
You were a part of, obviously, the Cavs championship in 2016, and you know how much that one meant to Bron for various reasons. When you watched this one, and for yourself as well, no disrespect, but I'm saying from a standpoint of, I think you saw a different kind of emotion from LeBron during that title than maybe you saw in his first 2, obviously in Miami, though his first one obviously meant a lot to him. They all do. But my point here is when you watched the way in which the emotion came over Steph,
Yeah.
what did you kind of think of that?
No, like, so I said it like, I said that the most important championship for Kobe Bryant was the first one that he won when Shaq left. Because there was a finals where Shaq averaged 36. That was a young Kobe. It was probably, I want to say he graduated in high school in 96. It was 2000. So he was probably 22, 23. He was young, super young. But he averaged about 16 in that finals, and Shaq averaged 36. So the most important championship for Kobe was that first one that he won without Shaq, because that solidified like look, like, we were a dynamic duo, but I can do this solo, especially because Shaq won that extra one in Miami. Now, even when he won his fifth one, he goes, what does this mean to you? He goes, it means I have one more than Shaq. So, like, for all of us to not act like these players ain't counting rings, like, those are lies. Like, they might sit there when they're done and sit back and say, oh, I don't care about this stuff. That's a lie. So when I look at Kobe's one, I look at Bron's in Cleveland, like, that was it. That was his whole, in my opinion, if Bron had won one championship in his life and it was in Cleveland, because no player in history, we forget about that. No player in history is like, what am I going to do? I'm going to get drafted by my hometown team and I'm going to lead them to a championship. It's like, what? That's never been done in sports. Forget how they did it. Forget how he did it. It was like, who
I was going to say,
get to
first
say,
I'm
like,
going to first I'm going to piss him off. I'm going to go somewhere else and win, and then I'm going to come back, and it's going to be all fine
but he
again.
knew. But like, these guys know. I know that they don't talk about legacy and they pass that off like they should, but they know. Kobe knew how important winning a championship without Shaq was. Bron knew how important to his overall greatness, if he wants to be the best player to ever live, how important it was winning in Cleveland. And for Steph Curry, he knew how important that final MVP was. He knew all the things. That's why the first words out of his mouth is, what are they going to say now? What are they going to say now? So he was harboring that. Like, when he got up there, and Draymond, we know, Draymond's always popping off with receipts. But when Steph starts going up there and going at Perk and going at Foxworth, all those things, that's because, like, those are the energies that he harbored. And he said he's the petty king. Like, that means he's paying attention to all that stuff. So this is by far the most important championship for him, and it falls in a line with the most important. And I said it in the interview, I think Kevin Durant's next championship will be the most important. Those are the ones where, like, you remove all doubt. That's when it becomes, like, special.
I'm going to hang on to that take you just had on Kevin Durant, because I think it is a great segue into a spicy topic that's going on in the NBA right now, but we're not finished with this conversation. When it comes to Steph and the end of his legacy, where do you think he'll fall when it comes to all-time greats? I've never heard so many people right now, and it must be just kind of the moment, I guess, but so many people, when, you talk about the finals and the Warriors winning, they're so quick to be like, oh, that makes him number 10. Or as specific as, he's the 11th best player. And I'm like, wait, what?
It's your list. It's who's your favorite player, who you idolize. My guy,
but
Andre,
he's up there.
And look, he's a top 10 player. Yeah, he's a top 10 player all time, because everything he's doing is going to continue. It's like when LeBron James breaks a scoring record, he's going to continue pushing it. So it's like, bro, you ain't got to pass Kareem anymore. You ain't got to get to that number. What you got to do is you got to play another probably 2-3 seasons to catch Bron. I'll say this, right? And I'm as a Magic Johnson fan and all this like stuff, like, I don't like to compare. I just want to make sure that people understand, like, what you say when this, like, Allen Iverson. What position is Allen Iverson?
Point guard.
Are we sure?
Shooting guard.
Yes. Allen Iverson's a shooting guard. Now, he can play point. He can drop dimes. He can do all of those things. But we typically only call those
small
guys
forward.
Position. But I'm saying we call them, but Jesus, say them all. They call them that based off of their, but a lot of times it's based off of their size. It's based off of their size, right? So like, when you look at Allen Iverson, he was a two guard. He had Eric Snow on his team during his most successful year. So oftentimes Eric Snow, what he would do is he would play the point, let AI be the one, and then he would guard the two and let AI guard the one, so that AI wasn't forced to guard much bigger players. And to me, it reminds me so much of who Steph is, right? And the way he plays. there is not one attribute that you would contribute to Steph as a point guard, right? And that's not a knock. Before you idiots start doing that, before you idiots stop doing that, he's the greatest shooter of all time, greatest three-point shooter of all time. He is a shooting guard. He is a shooting guard, and it is a beautiful thing. But this is my theory. The reason why people want to call him a point guard is because they feel like he can move up that ranks of all-time shooting guards. Like, I think he's, if you say point guards, the people that you talk about in recent basketball history a lot of times are Jason Kidd, Steve Nash. No, thank you. No, thank you. Is it? No, yeah, leave it. Anyway, sorry about that. When you talk about Jason Kidd, Steve Nash, Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, John Stockton, that list, when you look at Steph's accolades, it's easy. There's only one guy that you would probably compare him to in modern day, right? It would be like the Isaiah Thomas, it would be the Magic Johnson. That's the only one. Obviously John Stockton with the assist and all that stuff. But when you look at two guards, they don't want to go down that two guard route, because that two guard route includes MJ, which he can't do. Like, that's not on him. When you talk about two guards, then you end up talking about Kobe Bryant. You don't want to start a Steph versus Kobe argument. So they're like, well, he's a point guard. It's like, okay, well, let's see this. Does Steph initiate their offense? No. When is Steph at his best? When he is off the ball, like a shooting guard. So all the success that they have, Draymond, Andre, Jarrett Jack, his first year when he played point, the first year when he broke the 3-point record, Jarrett Jack was a point guard. Steph and Klay were the wings running around and knocking down threes. So it's hard for me to establish you as a point guard other than your height and your quote unquote starting position. When you play off the ball, you typically don't lead your team in assists. Don't quote me on that. I had to go back and check the stats. I know that's Draymond's normally the initiator of the offense. And then you have guys like Andre and Livingston, big wings that can handle the ball and distribute so he can play off the ball. So for me, that says, if you look at every single thing of his criteria, where he's at his best, what his skill set is, it says shooting guard. But they don't want to compare him to other shooting guards, because then you get to the MJ Kobe conversations, even Jerry West, and you just don't want to have those conversations. So they're like, he's a point guard, and we're going to compare him to Magic Johnson, who was all time in the league in assists.
But completely opposite.
And you're like,
completely opposite.
The skill set and the focus of what he does is different. One of the things, like for LeBron and Shaq, what do those two guys need? Shaq needed a late game finisher. LeBron needs shooters around him, because his skill set says, if you put me with 4 shooters and defenders, we're gonna go. Right? With Steph, it's like, if you get me with intelligent people that know how to handle the basketball, I'm going to create havoc with my movement, and he is the greatest that we have ever seen at it. So nothing about that particular skill set, not saying that Steph doesn't run their offense, not saying that Steph doesn't do all of the things that a point guard does. It's positionless basketball.
Minds, basketball individuals understand what you're saying. Yeah,
it is positionless basketball, and Steph is one of the top 10 players of all time, because he's going to continue adding to it. If he were to stop today, that's the argument. But I think that he's the greatest point guard, or he's surpassed Magic Johnson, who scored 42 as a rookie in the NBA Finals, and has 3 Finals MVPs, has 3 MVPs. Let's slow down respectfully and not forget that also Magic Johnson's career was cut short, due to all of the things that we know. So he probably had 2 or 3 more years, maybe not win a championship, but to add to some of these numbers. So that's my only thing. Steph is a bad man, top 10 all time, greatest shooter we've ever seen, and freaking good for him.
Before we kind of close up this conversation, you want to give your props to Klay and Steph?
Yeah, there's this one thing that I would say, as being on their team and playing against them, there's always been this underlying resentment, just from like players. Like, a lot of NBA players come from very, different backgrounds. Some come from nothing. And so I think there was a little bit of I don't want to say resentment, but some of like, you didn't have the same path as like a lot of other guys that came from different backgrounds. Steph and Klay's dads both played in the NBA. So in your brain, you think money for trainers, money for camps, money for shoes. Like, I remember having holes in my shoes and having to put a little cardboard in it so that I could keep rocking because that toe had worn down so much. Like there was a grind, there was a there was a an idea that that's where like you have to fight to get there. And I think there was a little bit of resentment from players when it came to Steph and Klay. It's like, what adversity have these guys had to get here? Well, they've had a ton. But in the same breath, I've heard NBA players talk about the stress that might come from their own kids. I've talked to Bron and seen the stress that he feels like Bronny and Bryce have to deal with. Shit, they made a movie about it in Space Jam 2, right? I've talked to different guys like Rondo and different guys that are like, man, I've just, I put pressure on my kids. Like, I named Richard Little Richard. Luke Walton, one of my best friends in the entire world, coming from his dad. They have a different type of pressure and expectation that people don't fully respect. So while they didn't come from a single parent household or a parent that had nothing or raised by they didn't have that background, so a lot of guys would look at them like oh, these kids were private school kids and they had it easy and their dad, his dad taught them how to shoot and Klay grew up around the Lakers. That couldn't be any further from the truth. Like Steph went to Davidson, Klay went to Washington State, and Washington State some shit. We would beat them like 26 straight times. But they didn't have this easy path. I'm just throwing a shot. They didn't have this easy path. And I think that a lot of times there's this misconception that because they came from dads that were great players, their path was easy. It was different, but the pressure on them in these moments when it's time to perform was actually harder. And I just want to make sure that people understand, while they might have come from fortunate backgrounds, their path
one of my favorite all-time quotes is hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. No matter what that path is, and again, I think we all are mature enough to understand that like everyone's path is different. It doesn't mean that yours is more or less than the next person. Like they still have had to work. And I think that's the one thing that they both can say about themselves is the place in which they've got to. It's not just because they're dads. It's not just because of the position that they're in. And I'll take this one step further just for myself. No. I got a lot of that hate, and I know we all have a scrapbook, but in high school, I'm a principal's kid. And everyone thought just because I was the high school principal's daughter, I was on varsity as a freshman. No, I worked my ass off. I was in the gym every single day, every single morning when that freaking alarm clock went off and I didn't want to get up and my dad's screaming across the hallway. Yeah, did I have the keys to the door? Yeah, but I also have teammates that could have asked to come with me. I still think that there is a...
You also use those keys. So you have to use those keys.
And I love that you wanted to address that and talk about that. And I think you can take it full circle too to right now. We just had Shareef O'Neal, who is obviously in the draft or wanting to be drafted. In the conversation that came down when you talk about pressure, Shaq didn't want him to go to the draft. He wanted him to stay for another year because Shaq, and rightfully so, I respect all of this. He's a big guy when it comes to education, and he wanted Shareef to stay in school. And guess what Shareef said at 22 years old? I know what I want. I'm ready for this. I want to take this opportunity. And he believes in himself. And I think there is that whole understanding of wanting to create your own, especially when your father has done so much already, and he is his name, but you want to create that own name for yourself. So yeah, I love that perspective that you gave.
Yeah. No, and look, when I just want to make sure people understand, when I say resentment, it's not like people like they're the two most likable superstars.
I mean, did you see the parade for Klay? Right? Did you see the amount of fumbles, the hat running over the lady, dropping the ring?
Yeah, that's
amazing.
Look, I had Klay as a rookie, and when I tell you Klay is one of the most all-time people that you will ever see and experience. But I don't think that, I think some of it's weighing down because they've obviously earned their stripes. But I think these are the moments where you look at, and it's like Klay, coming back from the injuries. That don't have shit to do with his dad. Coming back from those injuries and having to put in that work for 2 years, that don't got shit to do with his pops. That's about what's in him. And so I just think I definitely want to make sure that we acknowledge that, because those guys are just different. And greatest, Mark Jackson, shout out, said that they were the greatest shooting backcourt that he'd ever seen in 2012. Wow. He said that. 2012. Then 10 years later, these dudes have won 4 championships.
Because they work. They put work into their craft. They're everything but lazy. Oh, what a perfect opportunity. Before Rich, you respond,
here we go.
Earlier this week, to kind of set this up, we're going to allow Shannon Sharpe to do the job for us. This is what was said this week on Undisputed when Shannon Sharpe wanted to react to what Richard had to say on Michelle Beadle's podcast about working on other sports. Take a listen.
You're being lazy, Richard. You should want to go out and learn more about football. I wanted to learn more about basketball, so I watch intently every single game so I can talk about football. I can talk about basketball. I can talk about Juneteenth. I can talk about George Floyd because I read. I've immersed myself in that. And I feel very comfortable when I sit out here and that camera's on me. I feel very confident that I'm talking with a pretty good degree of certainty. I feel very comfortable in what I'm saying. So that's the difference.
All right, Rich. So Shannon Sharpe has called, and you're lazy? Your approach is lazy?
Well, okay. So, this is the context. I basically on Beatles podcast, I said, like, I don't want to do that job. I don't want to do and sit and talk all sports. And I said that, like, you have to, I said, one, I don't want to learn fucking football. I made a joke about that with Beetle. The idea is basically this. And so I did a TikTok about it. I posted it, and I'm probably going to post it on more social medias in a second. But the idea is this. When you do this job, Allie, as you know, there's hosting, there's analysts, there's people that are doing studio shows, there are people that are calling games, there's so many different things in this sports thing, but you feel like they're all the same, and they couldn't be any further from different. And so I decided that I didn't want to just be a talking head. I don't want to sit in a studio 360 days a year and talk about all the sports. What I decided to do is be a specialist in basketball. So I focus on calling games. I focus on hosting shows. So it's like, hey, everybody, welcome to this. That's a very different job, as you know, as Allie, one of the best hosts, multi-Emmy winner, that's very different than being an analyst of like you asking me a question and me going. So I've spent time on my skill, and he was like, well, you should want to sit in this seat, Richard. You should want to learn more about football. And I was like, don't tell me what I should want to do, because my career path is different to yours. And I have so much respect for Shannon Sharpe, and he is right. He has overcome so much because so many people thought that he couldn't do something. So now he feels like it's his job to challenge people to do what he's done and follow in his footsteps, except I don't want to be him. I don't have a desire to do that. And I respect that. No different than I didn't have a desire to be a point guard. That is not how I wanted to, that's not how I wanted to use my skill set. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And for me, I just took offense because I understand what he's saying and I know what he's trying to do. I get it, but he just missed the mark with saying some of the things he said. He talked about like, well, I'm well read, so I can, talk about different issues. I can talk about the different things going on in the world, which would imply that somebody doesn't want to do that work to sit in that seat, which couldn't be any further from the truth. And so even one of the things that he said, he's like, when I watch the game and I focus on basketball, I watch on mute so that he doesn't get, nobody else's ideas and thoughts come into his brain. It's based off what he see. Well, if he would turn it up just a little bit, he would see how much he would be hearing my voice calling those games. And Allie, you know this from calling Sparks games. How many hours do you have to prep for a game?
One, it doesn't stop because you're constantly watching games and you're constantly on social media. You're constantly reading articles, etc. But I would say I put in for one game anywhere between 5 to 7 hours.
How many hours?
On one game. And guess how much you actually use?
5 to 7 hours.
3%.
Very little. You got to have it all. 3%. So like that's the thing about it, is that like you can find ways and stuff. But for me, it's like, that's where I decided to put my energy, and that's where I decided. So when I say I don't want to talk about football and I don't want to sit around being a talking head, it was never to knock them. In that interview with Michelle Beadle, I said all the time, they are special. They are specialists. I couldn't do it. It is a skill. I have so much respect, but I said I couldn't do it. And she goes, oh, yes, you could. And I was like, okay, let me phrase this. I don't want to do it. I don't want to fucking talk about football and blah, blah. So that's not what I want to do, right? So like for him, he's like, well, you should want to. And I was like, no, that's not cool. That's not the idea, because what I want to do is call an NBA Finals one day, right? And I'm not going to do that sitting in a studio talking about hosting all the time. I want to host shows. And I'm not going to do that sitting in a studio just being an analyst. And when I say just being an analyst, it's not a knock. When you're saying just an analyst, that's an analyst across all sports, especially on their shows. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that, like, when you call my approach lazy, or when he says that it couldn't be any further from the truth, is an actual lie. And it's one thing that about this, Allie, when athletes enter into this space, it doesn't matter if you're a Hall of Famer, doesn't matter if you're good, if you're not. The one word that is like the kryptonite is that if an athlete comes in and thinks he's an athlete, and if an athlete comes in and is lazy, doesn't show up on time. So for me, I took a lot of offense to that word, because when I started working hard in this industry, that was part of the reason why I had success. They're like, well, most athletes don't do that. Most athletes don't, come in and be on production calls at 5 a.m. for Get Up, or every morning at 7 a.m. when I'm on a production call for NBA Today. The typical athletes don't do that. But I'm not trying to be typical, but that's part of the reason why I've had success. So I love my guy, Shannon Sharpe. He's the OG, all respect. And this is purely just, sports talk TV. But I wanted to make sure that we set the record straight of, like, as long as you live, do not ever refer to me as lazy, just because my approach and what I want to specialize in.
And I
is
think
different than yours.
I love that you took this opportunity, especially on the first ever player driven podcast that was ever created, your own platform. I will say, again, right. I have shared this with you. I have the utmost respect for Shannon Sharpe and his partner and Skip Bayless, who have allowed me to come on their show during my time in Cleveland to talk. They were very welcoming to me. They've always been good to me. And I respect the grind and the hustle of so many in our industry, which, to your point, is something very different than what you're wanting to do, Rich. And I say this not from a bias standpoint, and many people will say, oh, she's biased because she works with them. Yeah, there might be a little bit of that, but I've also seen for the last over a handful of years your grind and your hustle. And I'm not going to show your cards, but it's well documented, the things that you have done outside of even just basketball. Yeah.
I'm fucking tired.
Yeah, and for someone like me who does a lot of the behind the scenes for Road Trippin, and that's only one of the 97 things that you do, I struggle sometimes to even get you here because you're so busy doing everything but being lazy. And so I think it's important, though, in today's day and age of the new media, that we like to call it, that you speak on yourself and what it is that you've put the work in for, and kind of at times set the record straight, because I think that so many things can be taken out of context, so many things can be misconstrued, and it's important because guess what? At the end of the day, you aren't lazy, and you don't need people out there thinking that.
Well, you were the person that you were the battery in my back that was like, you got to address this. And I was like, man, I don't, like, it's exhausting, because once I do it, then there's a rebuttal, and then fans get involved in the shows and all the chirping. But you were like, Richard, you have to get involved. And I'm like, why? You're like, Richard, everyone in basketball knows that you're not. People at ESPN know that you're not lazy. People in basketball know that you're not lazy, all these other things. But what about the executive? What about the person that doesn't know you? What about the person? Yeah, they might do their homework, but for a guy like Shannon Sharpe, who deservingly so has a huge platform and has done an amazing job in his transition, like his words carry weight. So if somebody only sees that out of context and there is an opportunity for a job, and he's like, well, I heard somewhere that Richard was lazy, and he might not even know where he heard it from or the context in which he heard it from. They just hear that. So I felt like I was put in a position to, like, defend myself, and I was like, I didn't give a damn. I was like, yo, this is just it. But you're like, no, Richard, those words in reference to you need to be addressed. So thank you, and it's always good to have people on your team that fucking know.
And just so you know, half the conversations that Rich has with me are sometimes one-sided, and they have nothing to do with basketball. This man, I have told him over and over, is very underpaid. Yes, he's comfortable with hoops. He's played it his entire life. He knows it like the back of his hand. He can do it in his sleep, but he can give you so much more about life. He just isn't in that space just yet. I told him he should run for mayor. Having said that, moving on, the educated self that you are, props to you, respect. Let's take a quick time out because we have a few great products that we want to tell you about this week.
Listen, road trippers, you still dreaming about that trip to see your favorite team this summer? Well, if we told you NerdWallet can help you take that first step to making a dream a reality, NerdWallet's team of nerds research hundreds of the top credit card, mortgages, and more so you can easily compare and find what's right for you. And since you're already making those plans to see your squad in action, let's bring along a friend. NerdWallet can help you find travel reward cards with a sign-up bonus to use on a hotel for the whole crew. Ready to compare your way there? Take the first step by discovering the smartest credit cards, mortgages, and more today at nerdwallet.com. NMLS 1617539.
All right, road trippers, have you heard about Prize Picks? Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Our entire crew loves it, and we know you will too. Prize Picks has the best prop game across the market, whether it's the Stanley Cup Finals, Major League Baseball, or NFL Week 1 games. They offer more props than any other DFS operator, and they offer every player and stat category that you can think of. Want to get in the game now? There's plenty going on. All new users that make their first deposit and use the promo code Road Trippin will receive an instant 100% deposit match up to $100. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players and select an over-under on their daily projections. And you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks even allows mixed sport entries. Use the award-winning Prize Picks app either on the App Store or Google Play today. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Sign up today and enjoy a special bonus offer on us. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code ROADTRIPPIN or go to your App Store and download the app today. Remember, road trippers, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You mentioned something a little bit ago, and it actually kind of sparked my brain cells to ask you about this. The quote from Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I thought was incredible. I don't know if you saw it. He went on a talk show just recently and made the comment that he's still the all-time leading scorer in the NBA, having only made 1 3. We know the story. There's a lot of respect between him and LeBron. This is not an opportunity to compare the two of them. Let's make that clear. Having said that, though, when you hear that, when you actually take a second to hear that, that is wild that he scored that many points. That is buckets. Are we kidding?
And that's part of the thing where like people don't understand like there's a lot.
It's my favorite NBA
pettiness.
Petty NBA is my favorite NBA.
The NBA, when they talk about how the NBA, the NBA is the best sports league in the world because of the drama. Right? Like there's drama in all sports. That's part of it. But the NBA is just relentless. It just doesn't stop. Like the finals just ended. We're arguing about Steph Curry. Now free agency, like the draft is about to happen. So all the shitty teams that haven't been talked about for the last fucking 2 months, now it's their time. It's like, it's us. This is what we're going to talk about. They're going to talk about Orlando and they're going to talk about OKC and they're going to talk about all those things. And then after that, we got to go do Summer League. So what I like about this is that guys are petty. And I mean that in the most utmost respect. They're just competitive. So competitiveness brings out pettiness, and that's what it is. Because even George Gervin, when Klay Thompson broke the quarter record, I think most points ever in a quarter. I know Kevin has most points ever in a first quarter, but Klay had 37 maybe in a quarter, and he broke George Gervin's record. Difference was George Gervin, who was one of the great shooters, one of the great scorers that we've ever seen, the Iceman, one of the coolest nicknames in the history of sports, he didn't have a three-point line. So he scored 37 points without a three-point line in a quarter. And so that's not to knock the players here. It's just to give context of how hard it was to do 37 points without a three-point line, to score 37,000 points without a three-point shot. Do you know how ridiculous that is? And so, I think the cool thing about it is that it's petty, it's a little back and forth, it's all good and fun, but I think the best part about it is that it gives people context, right? It gives people context. He had to grind for every bucket, every hook, everything.
Speaking of petty, shout out to our guy James Worthy when the Warriors won. You saw that tweet from Big Game? He did that. First of all, he did the night-night to Boston.
What did he say?
He has a selfie of himself with the TV in the background, night-night, and then he also did the choke for Cedric Maxwell. They've had their little thing. They go back and forth, but the I mean, there is nothing like, and that's something I've learned since being here in LA, that rivalry between Boston and LA. It doesn't even matter. Like, the Lakers weren't even in the playoffs this year, and big game, and rightfully so. My God, he's a legend, right? My favorite ever. But the way in which he talks and talks and talks about Boston, it's incredible. There's nothing like it.
Oh, it's dude, Boston. So the best rivalries in sports.
Thank you.
It's Ohio State, Michigan in football.
Duke, North Carolina in college basketball. Yep.
North Carolina, Duke and basketball, college basketball. In baseball, it's Yankees, Red Sox. It doesn't mean there's not other rivalries, but those are the
NFL?
winners. And in basketball, it's Celtics versus Lakers. So they don't. NFL, the biggest rivalry in the NFL. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if because there's a lot of great legacy franchises in the NFL. I don't know if there's
Is it
one
just the Patriots?
that stands out.
Just them?
I don't think there is one. No, because that's recency
today's day and
bias.
age.
That's recency bias because you look at, there's the Steelers. No, I know, but I'm just saying there's the the Steelers and what they've been able to do
Where do the
for a
Browns
long
fall
time
on that
too.
list?
So I can't just give it to them.
We're not.
Yeah, the
We
Browns. To all my Cleveland people out there, I love you. My son was born in Cleveland.
All right, let's talk about, before we wrap this up, free agency. The draft is obviously happening. Shout out to all of those on a day like today. I could only imagine how special it is. Obviously, you got to experience that yourself. But I know when it comes to the free agency perspective and talk, the Kyrie Irving situation. You call games for the Brooklyn Nets. We spent time with Kyrie. You were a teammate. I covered him in Cleveland. Let me just ask you this. Obviously, everyone knows what's going on, but if you don't, the Lakers are considered the most significant threat right now for Kyrie Irving per Adrian Wojnarowski. Kyrie to the Lakers free agency. Could you see it happening? Could you see LeBron and Kyrie playing NBA basketball games on the same team again?
100%, because it goes back to our petty argument. Basketball players are petty. When there's like, oh, when you break up with your ex and then you start dating someone and you're like, oh, they not that cute, and it's like, will you take me back? Yeah, I'll take you back, right? Like that's like the NBA is high school drama. The NBA is high school drama. Kyrie had his most successful years playing next to LeBron. LeBron had some of his most historic years, right? And were so important to what he accomplished in his life playing next to Kyrie. The only thing, it doesn't matter. It's about Kyrie. It doesn't matter where Kyrie is. It doesn't matter if he's in Brooklyn. It doesn't matter if he's in LA. It doesn't matter where Kyrie is. It's all dependent on Kyrie. Like, I'm not going to get into the whole vaccine. Like, no. Kyrie would not be leaving Brooklyn if Kyrie had performed at the level that he's capable of for multiple years. So now the Brooklyn Nets are hesitant to give him a long-term deal. And he's playing next to the first, second, or third best player in the world, depending on what month it is and how they're playing. It's Giannis, it's Bron, it's Embiid, it's KD, just depending on what month it is. So, like, if he's playing with KD and whatever, for whatever reason, the Brooklyn Nets were like, we just don't feel comfortable. I saw a thing the other day on Twitter where they were like, Looney played more games this season alone, this year, than Kyrie has in his 3 years with the Nets. And that's like, I get injuries, I get the stuff, but it's just like, if Kyrie comes to LA and plays 70 games and is healthy for a playoff run, yes, the Lakers are a contender. If Kyrie comes here and goes to LA and plays 52 games and has some things that are whatever going on or that he is dealing with, there is no difference. There is no difference in that, because the Nets don't want to let him go, but you have to earn things. When you start feeling entitled, and Kyrie's talent has earned him a max contract, but there are other things that have gone on that have made the Nets hesitant and have probably made the other teams hesitant. It doesn't question his talent, and talent
I like that
equals
line.
tolerance.
To your point of Kevon Looney playing more games than Kyrie. Kyrie has played in only 46% of the games over his last 3 seasons. He has missed more than he has played. Having said that, I think that if you're the Lakers, when it comes to this, Rich, what do you need? And you have a meeting with Kyrie. What do you need to hear from Kyrie Irving to convince you?
I need Kyrie to discuss his communication. If there's something going on in your life, if there's ever a moment where you need a moment or a break, you have to communicate it. Because that was one of the big things that happened when I think his first year playing with Steve Nash as the head coach. It was, Kyrie took some time off, blah, blah, was going through some things personally, which I respect. He should be allowed to have time off. But ultimately, there was a lack of communication there. And I think that was a part that I think, I can't speak on it from the Nets like consistently, like because I wasn't on a part of the inside of that. But I just think you need communication from Kyrie. Like sometimes players, and for instance, let's use Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony was out the league not because of his talent. He's out the league because of his approach, and he was struggling to adapt to what teams wanted his role to be. Right? They're like, bro, you're not a 25-point a game scorer anymore. Like, you might be better coming off the bench, going against second units and being a scorer. Coming off the bench. And then he found himself out the league. Then, after humbling himself and as a first ballot Hall of Famer, he worked his way back into the league and accepted that role and then excelled in it. Extended his career by 5-6 more years. Right? Like, so I think when you look at Kyrie, it's like, hey, like you have to be honest with yourself. Everyone is telling you X, right? Like, hey, this is what this is what we need from you. And so if Kyrie's going to adapt to what the Lakers need from him, then great. But this is all about Kyrie. It's always going to be about Kyrie. And someone said like, oh, look, Kyrie's not. He said that basketball is not the most important thing to him. That's a tough thing. That's a tough thing to hear. Now. For Kyrie, that's okay. I know lots of players that were like, this is my job. This is what I'm going to go do. I'm a professional and I go do it to the best of my ability, but it's not the most important thing. That's tough because there are players where it is the most important thing. So like, it's not just for the players it is the most important thing for them to adapt to a player that says like, hey, I'm a professional and I do my job professionally, but it's not the most important thing to me. It's not just for those guys to adapt to Kyrie. It's also Kyrie's job to adapt to them. It is a mutual relationship of like, you got to understand me and I have to understand you.
How much do you think with Kyrie saying that it's not the most important thing though, is just a way in which to get across how important it is to him to be more than just a basketball player and make sure people understand that? Because I just struggle. The only reason why I say this is, and I feel very fortunate to have covered him early on in his career. And there was so much, I feel like there were so many different versions of Kyrie because of that maturation process. And obviously, his first 2 years that LeBron is out of Cleveland and they didn't win a lot of games and he was young in the league and had only played 11 games at Duke, right? And there was so much to learn. And then LeBron comes back and so much changes. Obviously, I went through that myself as a reporter, but I saw so many different layers and levels, and then you take it to just even the finals year that you guys won it. And between games 1 through 4 and 5 through 7, you saw a completely different Kyrie. And my question to you is just like, at this point, I wonder, because there's this emotional and very genuine deep side of Kyrie that I think that so many would appreciate and do appreciate. He's shown ways in which he's impacting outside of basketball, et cetera. But I wonder sometimes if people misunderstand and they just take that for such a surface thing that he said in terms of it's not the most important thing to him. I think that basketball is very important to him. And don't think that just because he says it's not the most important thing to him, that it's not important to him.
Yeah, that's a bit. You want to know how important it is to Kyrie? There is no thing that is harder for a professional athlete than to train away from your team and then come in game ready. Kyrie was away from his team for months, and that man showed up in shape, ready to go. They're like, oh, we're going to give him 3-4 days, and then he started coming out dropping 40, 50 balls, highly efficient. You cannot do that unless you are dedicated, unless you are working like that is the most important thing to you. He is saying that mentally and emotionally, that might not be the only thing he focuses on. right? Like when I go home, I watch my basketball, I do my work, and then I focus in on other things. And sometimes there are things that are more important, right? Whether it's, being an activist, whether it's donations, like he's done so much for the community. And I think that's what he's talking about is like, look, basketball will come and go. There'll be another player this, but if I can make a legacy that is outside of basketball, that to me is what's most important. And I forgot who it was. It was, it was said, maybe it's Isaiah Thomas, I can't remember, but in his tweet bio it says, if basketball is all I'm remembered for, then I failed, right? And I think that that's so powerful. He's saying that, look, I've been given a platform. I am a father. I am a husband. If basketball is only thing that you remember me for, then I did not do my job. And I think Kyrie falls in that line where like that's how
keeping their eye on, as will the both of us. All right, before we wrap this up, because I know you have to run, you have a busy day ahead of you, you have everything with the draft, etc., and then you get to go hang out with your BFFs. I was going to go one way, but I'm going to actually go another. And I think we should give our guy, though it's not done yet, and I saw his story on Instagram, and it was one more win. Can you give some love to Josh Kroenke?
Josh.
Holy, what a year, what a time to be Josh Kroenke.
No, this is first of all, I love Josh. He is like a brother to me, right? Like we've known each other since we were 22, 23 years old. But this dude, and this is why I want to be happy for him, but I'm a part of his success. I'm so happy for him. I'm petty. But like the reason, so Josh Kroenke, who is a friend of the podcast, he's been on here so many times. He is the governor for the Denver Nuggets and for the Colorado Avalanche and works with the Arsenal, and family owns the Rams. So they won the Super Bowl.
And family now owns the Broncos, right?
They have the 2-time MVP.
Not yet. Yeah.
No. Well, no, that's the other side of his family. That's the other side of his family. Like that's like his uncles and stuff like that.
Respect,
it's different.
Respect.
It's different, right? This is his dad. This is his dad and his mom.
Respect.
They're different. They're different and different. And so they own the Rams, and then they they moved the Rams. There's a whole thing. They open up a new stadium, win the Super Bowl after losing the Super Bowl. So I was there when they lost in Atlanta, and so wins the Super Bowl. And then what does he do? He has the back-to-back MVP in Jokic. And again, those guys could have very easily been in the finals, like if they were fully healthy. Then what does he do? He just builds an amazing team in Colorado, and now the Avalanche are one win away from winning a Stanley Cup. And this is the part where I get grumpy. He also beat me in the
That's all he wanted to
final this year. That's the part where he's like, I won the That's all he wanted to talk about. That's all he wanted to talk about. I fucking won the fantasy football. Yeah, I beat Rich. That was his first time in the final. I've been in the final 3 times. I've lost all 3, very similar to my normal life. But the best part about the final, and why everybody in the league was rooting against me, is that whenever you win the final, because we do like a location one where we travel, we've done stuff. So whenever you win the final, you get to pick where the location is for the draft. So everyone's like, where are we going, Josh? Where are we picking up on the Jumbotron in SoFi Stadium? Like, where are we doing the fantasy football league? And so Josh is excited. By him. But look, one more win, and then we can really do it. I know there's guys like in our fantasy football league that are like in Tampa Bay, like watching games. I think it might be the next one, game 5. Game 5 is in Colorado. So like
that's so crazy.
It's good for him.
That is so wild. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a hell of a run. But this is the thing that I love about Josh. Josh is one of those guys. We talk about legacy. We talk about Steph. We talk about Klay. Josh is in that same mold. Well, yes, he did come from a very, very affluent background, but he has worked his ass off. He has worked his tail off to get where he has gotten and to have success, because we've seen franchises, all sports, be shitty for 10 years, 15 years. For him to be able to manage all of these sports and be able to contribute to these communities, to contribute to the success of these franchises and these players, that is a compliment to him and his work ethic. And I think that's something that should be
shout out to you,
also.
Josh Kroenke. All right, Rich.
Shut up, Josh.
We're going to close out on today is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. being signed into law. Yes. Shout out. Celebrate it.
Awesome. We're gonna celebrate it because I was thinking about this the other day, and we applaud women's sports, and I love it during the Olympics when they show all the medals and the U.S. women's teams win in the Olympics and World Championships. And you look at the U.S. women's national soccer team, you look at the women's basketball national team, you look at so many different sports teams that are like prides for this country, and that's because we had to put a damn law in place. We put a law in place which allowed for us to be prideful of our country. Think about that. Like, we had to put a law in place that says you're going to give women the same opportunity, and now we pat ourselves on the back. And it's like, look at our, like, because my favorite team, like my favorite national team is the U.S. women's, soccer team. And you look at the WNBA, and you look at all of these athletes, the Mia Hamms, the Serena Williams, like all of these great players. And I don't know about Serena's past because I think she like turned pro at 11. But like so many opportunities have been afforded to women because of Title IX. And it still blows my mind that like your mom, my mom, they didn't have Title IX growing up. They didn't have it. It would like, my mom is damn near 70. So like Title IX didn't really get into in place until she was well on her way past, you know what I'm saying? So like for me, it's just such a special thing. And it's also still mind blowing that it was only 50 years ago. Like I'm 42. Mm-hmm. Like I'm 42. Like the impact of these things, like we don't know. And I think we should really look at our history when we decide what we're doing moving forward, because is this something that we're going to be proud of in 50 years? Or is this something that we're going to look back on and say, hey, we should have done it differently? And Title IX is something that should be talked about every single year of how important it is.
You bring up a great point of the fact that we had to put a law in place, but I guess I'm just most proud of the ones that fought for it. Because I am not here today without those that came before me. It's something that every single day I recognize and I do not take for granted. Those that came before me, who showed me that it could be done, those that I get to be alongside today for those that come after us. It is something that is very special. It's important. It's necessary. And it just speaks opportunity at the highest. And so truly respect. And I'm very proud of that and what today stands for.
And remember this, if the Supreme Court hasn't had to make a ruling about your life, you are privileged.
And on that's how we will end this edition of Road Trippin'. All right, Road Trippers, have you heard about Prize Picks? Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Our entire crew loves it, and we know you will too. Prize Picks has the best prop game across the market, whether it's the Stanley Cup Finals, Major League Baseball, or NFL Week 1 games. They offer more props than any other DFS operator, and they offer every player and stat category that you can think of. Want to get in the game now? There's plenty going on. All new users that make their first deposit and use the promo code ROADTRIPPIN will receive an instant 100% deposit match up to $100. All you have to do is pick 2 to 5 players and select an over-under on their daily projections. And you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Prize Picks even allows mixed sport entries. Use the award-winning Prize Picks app either on the App Store or Google Play today. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Sign up today and enjoy a special bonus offer on us. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code ROADTRIPPIN or go to your App Store and download the app today. Remember, Road Trippers, Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy.